Welcome to NFL Fantasy Live. In a moment, our math marvels, Cynthia Freeland, meanders over to feature her Thursday Night Football findings. Meanwhile, today at the table, a trio of hot takesmen include the autumnal Akbar and Adam, and the fall's finest Hall of Famer, Michael Fabiano. Autumnal.
Like autonomous?
Yeah, the autumn season.
Like autonomous, like I can do whatever I want?
Autumnal.
Like automatic?
I would love it if you were an automaton. I would. It would make me so happy for the next 60 minutes. But unfortunately, you are you, I am me. And we move forward as we present a preview of the best and worst fantasy starts of the week at each position. Now, we'll circle back to the quarterbacks in a moment. But for now, Fabs, give me your, we'll call it the lock of the week at the running back position.
Boy, Christian McCaffrey has been better than advertised, even better than his rookie campaign. Over the last 3 weeks, he has scored 7 touchdowns. He's averaging over 30 fantasy points. And this week, he gets the Lions, who have allowed the most yards per carry this season, the 8th most fantasy points to running backs. They've also allowed 8 top 20 running backs in 9 games this season. So CMC, without C.J. Anderson, who has now been released, is a very solid play.
Top pass catcher rank.
The easiest one for me is Michael Thomas. He might be the top-rated fantasy player of anybody at any position. And you look at it going into this game against that Philadelphia Eagles secondary, which has been banged up. They've been beset by injuries this season, and I look for a game in New Orleans to be very high-scoring. And every time Drew Brees drops back to pass, it seems like he is looking at Mike Thomas, and he leads the NFL in targets, and I expect that trend to continue.
I'm going to, look, am I the guy that orders eggs and says, no oil, can you just use spray? Egg whites only, I'm that guy. Yeah, that's me. That's why none of you guys ever invite me to go out to eat with you. It's too embarrassing. I like Evan Ingram.
Among other things.
I know there's some big names, Kelsey, Ertz, all those out there, but the matchup's great, and I don't need to tell you about what happens when teams take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They allow the most yards to tight ends, and I suspect that this is going to be a high-scoring affair. And Evan Ingram, look, he's been banged up this season. Last week we saw him get the targets, and I suppose those targets are going to be cashed in for big-time points. So I like going Ingram this week for the top tight end.
You know, Money, you might be a little difficult to go out to a restaurant with.
Very
but
difficult.
For me, I'm a very positive person, and I can find the good and bad. And I'm going to find the good in this bad matchup. The Cardinals going up against the Raiders. Jalen Richard, I mean, he has been really the check-down king in this Raiders offense. And so you look at this game, this is a toilet bowl game, and I think Jalen Richard is going to probably end up with eight receptions or more in this game.
Okay.
And so you look at how bad this defense is, and you look at just kind of his production. He's had 5+ receptions in 4 of the last 5 games, but the Cardinals defense, really, the matchup is just really bad. They're allowing 25 fantasy points per game to running backs. So this is a good pickup.
That's your flex start of the week. Now let's shift to shady starts that we are not all that excited about.
Like LaShawn McCoy?
Like, yeah, I guess kind of, well, I don't know.
Let's go from one sort of older running back to another.
Okay,
Adrian
there we go.
Peterson, who's been a sit for me the last couple of weeks, and, well, he has scored single-digit fantasy points in 2 straight games. He's also averaged just 42 yards rushing since week 9. We've talked about their offensive line woes, and the Texans are allowing an average of 3.5 yards per rush, and they haven't allowed a 100-yard rusher all season long.
Rank, are you suggesting we're sending shade at Shady with our
That's what I thought, because when you led into that, I thought it was kind of a like shady start. We're talking about starting with Sean McCoy, but forgive me, I was off topic a little bit. But
He's throwing shade.
at the wide receiver position, I'm going to say Calvin Ridley. When you look right there, you see that he's averaging close to 11
Sir, are you
fantasy
sending
points.
shade my way?
Sir,
You are so,
would
you
you
know what?
stop sending me shade, sir, when I'm trying to talk
Good
about
sir.
Calvin Ridley? How dare you? But you see right there, the one thing that's the most troubling is that he's topped 5 fantasy points just once in his last 5 games. And this matchup against the Cowboys is actually pretty difficult. The Cowboys have been locking down opposing wide receivers. So if you can avoid it, I would not go with Calvin Ridley this week.
I am suggesting shade to be sent in the direction of Trey
It's throwing
Burton.
shade, man. Come on,
What is
come
it?
on. Throwing shade, not
All right,
sending
I'm gonna
shade.
throw some at Trey
You're so
Burton.
proper.
But how about this? You know what, Minnesota, I thought like that the decimal, I thought it was a typo, that the decimal was in the wrong place.
Wow.
Minnesota is allowing 1.45 fantasy points per game to tight ends the last 3 weeks. So I'm going to go ahead and say, while Mitch Trubisky is playing at a high level, Matt Nagy seems to have an offense where it's a different featured receiver every single week. It looks like well, it's not for whatever reason, because the middle of the Minnesota defense is so tough to deal with. The tight ends typically do not fare well against them. So I'm going to say no to Trey Burton. Akbar, shady flex start.
I had to go with Austin Eckler just because he's just not getting the touches. The touches aren't there. I mean, look, he's been productive, and we see how productive he can be. But the truth is, Melvin Gordon is hot right now, and you got to ride that hot streak, especially going into a tough matchup and a tough defense like the Broncos defense. You look at his touches. He's gotten fewer than 5 touches in 2 games. You just can't afford to play him. They can't afford to play him in this matchup. They want to keep that record alive. They're looking good. There's 2 good teams in Los Angeles.
Turns out. Cue up the quarterbacks. Time for us to pilot Air Rankings presented by FedEx. We'll each nominate a name for the top fantasy quarterback of the week. Faps, what do you got?
The same dude like I
every
always
week you
pick.
do this.
Every week it's Patrick Mahomes because you can't throw shade at him. You can't send shade at him. The guy is just tremendous. I mean, look at the numbers. He scored 20-plus fantasy points in all but 1 game this season. And who doesn't think that this game against the Rams, which is now being played in Los Angeles, isn't going to be a ridiculously high-scoring affair? We could see 60-plus combined points in this game. Mahomes, Goff, get them all in your lineup.
Yeah, well, I tell you somebody else who's going to have a pretty big game. Probably get up there in the 30s, the high 30s. Drew Brees.
High 30s?
Yeah, high 30s. I mean, look, he's coming off of back-to-back, 28-plus fantasy point games, and I don't see why he couldn't do it against this Philadelphia defense. And I know Philadelphia is a really, well, maybe was a good team because Drew Brees, he's got weapons everywhere in the running back position, at the wide receiver position. It doesn't stop. Week 11, he's going to continue the pace that he's on right now.
So let's see. I got Detroit allows second most quarterback points since week 5. I got Detroit, one of the worst run defenses in the NFL. Cam is a quarterback that also runs. Oh, that's a sweet combination.
There you go.
Cam is top 5 when it comes to points per game this season. This is a great matchup. I know it was a struggle last week. Maybe it cost you a Week 10 win, but Week 11, Cam,
it cost me.
Gonna bounce
I only
back
got 14 points
against
for him.
Detroit.
I'm still upset.
What you got?
I'm going to go with Andrew Luck. Obviously, the Tennessee Titans played very well against Tom Brady and the New England Patriots last week. Malcolm Butler was out there making some plays as well, but this is a brand new week. And I'm really focusing in on Luck and how well he's played ever since about the first month, after the first month of the season. He's really started to put to bed any concerns we had about his arm strength or anything like that. And now you look at it, he's averaging close to 4 passing touchdowns per game since week 4. He's had at least 20 fantasy points in 6 consecutive games. That's the longest active streak in the NFL. So
is Andrew Luck back? Is he back?
He's been back.
Like,
he's back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can start.
Mother, the mythical men from Tennessee make their way. That was Air Rankings presented by FedEx. Be sure to vote for the FedEx Air and Ground nominees at NFL.com/FedEx. And speaking of quarterbacks, Thursday, 2 of the game's electrifying signal callers duel in the Northwest. Aaron Rodgers and the Packers take on Russell Wilson and the Seahawks. Packers-Seahawks. When it's on, it's on. Thursday Night Football tomorrow at 8 Eastern on NFL Network, Fox, and streaming on Prime Video.